back for Monday. Got an awful lot of stuff we're going to go over. Julie and I have been talking about some things we're going to be bringing up for teachings on a long-term basis. But I tell you, the matter of things that are out there are stunning to the level of those things that have gone beyond comprehension. Now, I hate to be a show that brings all the negative stuff in, but you know what? Someone's got to talk about the facts of how evil works. Evil wishes to inflict itself upon you. It's a narcissistic, it is a behavior that is of destruction. Now, I used to have a bumper sticker that said 3 out of 5 voices in my head say go for it. Now, you can take that and mean what you want. But go for what? Standing on a cliff and you're hearing voices and telling you to jump? Standing in a crowd of people and you draw a gun and it's saying pull the trigger? Or you stand somewhere in a church somewhere and you give a prophecy that the voices tell you to give? When in reality, that is demons telling you what to do, telling you to do something that is not of God. Now, we're not trying to base anything here on a Christian theme whatsoever, though we do have our beliefs. And if that's what I believe, then that's what I believe. But the problem is it reality? Is it fact? Do I know what I know? Is it a standard that I can base everything in my life against? Is it enough that I can go to the extreme and feel confident that I'm not deceiving others? Now, you notice that the heading for the show is legal right. Now, just because you have a legal right to do something doesn't mean that you have an ethical right. Because our laws are changing to depravity, to the depths of Satan, to those things that are an abomination. Why? Because what it means is destruction. And I'm going to go over a couple things here that as I mentioned before, I come from an engineering background, radio engineering. Originally I wanted to go into broadcasting, and I ended up in an industrial induction dielectric welding, as they refer to, or dielectric heating. And that in itself is a major science. And then from a young man, I ended up working for Motorola, and then I went into General Electric Laboratories, came back to Motorola for a while, and then finished out with Intel as a contractor on inspection and verifying standards, okay, analytical testing, verifying that something is what we say it is, having a reference, having a baseline, okay, and in that, with QC and QA, okay, meaning that there's two ways to verify something. You have somebody who runs the tests and creates the documents, and then you have somebody that oversees it. So there's a checks and balance. Now, our government was supposed to have a checks and balance. Well, because of the New World Order, they have overrode that. There's no longer checks and balances. The executive order and the Congress, they've rolled over and anything goes, almost like during a church service. It's really what it amounts to. Now, in reality, supposable reality, your reality and my reality may be two separate things. This is what they're trying to teach. Now, the Common Core, the education system, is basically doing the same thing. It's trying to dumb us all down. Now, in my reality is based on my emotion, or is it based on the things that I see, or is there something that I can reference to? Is there something that I can verify? Can I go to documents? Can I go to other people and ask what they see? One thing about being in law enforcement, we learned really quickly that when a crime is committed and you have 5 witnesses, guess what? Every one of them sees something different. And maybe one of them might have enough credible evidence that you can base the situation on, which is amazing. And again, why? Well, what was their state of thinking at the time? Are they in stress? Was the situation, did it scare them? were they in fright? Were they, or they just don't want to be involved, which is unfortunately a big case. And so out of that comes deception, meaning that it's not truth. Okay, this situation that creates a paradigm or a facade or a lie, and from that basis, let's say that two people point the finger at somebody that they did something, and that's the only proof that they could have. And when they got to court, they found out that individual wasn't even there. Turns out that individual was somewhere else getting a traffic ticket 5 miles away. But yet 2 people saw it out of the 5 or whatever the number is. So again, my point is that even though you may hear something, you may see something, that at the time there's a set of circumstances that can come together. Now, I forget it was Bruce Lee's son. I don't remember his name. He accidentally killed himself on the set with a handgun. I believe it was a handgun. I think it was a .357. And they had many people had that gun in their hand, who were the safety inspectors, who were the stunt people, who were the safety coordinators, those of the organizations that verify on the set for Hollywood. There's those things that have the state of California have put in place. California standards and laws are probably one of the toughest, and I'm going to talk about that. But that gun made it through everyone's hands, and there was a blank in there. And though everybody checked it, they missed it. And in a horsing around or whatever he was doing, he put the gun up to his head and pulled the trigger. And even though it was a blank, when you're at close range, the pressure, the wad, those things that are within the blank entered his skull and killed him. And remember, everybody had a chance at inspecting that weapon to make sure that it was safe before going onto the set, and it was used somewhere else that had a blank in it. So that was not reality. Truth was not there. Now, was that intentional? Could be. Now that we know more about how the Illuminati works, if you're not a game player or you don't do what they want, they'll arrange things. There's always that possibility. We look at false flags. Julie may talk a little bit about tonight about the things that have been taking place recently. Well, you know what? They're all a lie. And what you get on the news media, they're not going to tell you the truth anyways. They're going to do everything they can to put a spin on it to make firearms or any attempt to defend yourself that it can't be allowed. Which, puts us in a position that if they take the guns away, then we're basically at the mercy of evil. Now, the occult, meaning these things hidden, our own government is an occult because there is no truth. They're compartmentalized to a point that one group doesn't know what the other one's doing. And the ones that do know seem to have the money and the power. And this didn't happen overnight. This has been going on a very long time. So basically, evil and its actions are in plain sight. And unfortunately, I have to say that the churches are doing the same thing. And I'm going to get into tomorrow night. If you join me on my regular show on Tuesday night, I'm really going to bring it out. I may lose some friends over this. But you know what? The line's drawn in the sand. The door has closed for many self-professing Christians who are not really doing the works. Okay? I'm just going to leave it at that. Because we're in trouble. And we're in trouble because good men did nothing. And now we're in this predicament where our loved ones, my loved ones, are now at risk because of the ignorance of those who claim to be men and women of God. Now, again, law versus ethics. So even though it's a law to abort children, meaning kill them, because you actually cease their heart from beating, so you murder them. In definition, that is murder. That's law, but it's not ethical. Now, it may be, quote, ethical to somebody else, but what is their truth? What is their reality? Are they willing to crawl back in the womb and have themselves executed? You know, they talk about limiting and lowering the population of the planet. Well, how about we start with you? I'm good with that. Because in reality, that since you're willing to kill others, your life means nothing to me. Now, you say, well, Scott, you're supposed to believe in God. Well, my job is to protect the innocent. My job is to protect the children. My job is to make sure the elderly aren't slaughtered, that some creature from another state or from another country comes in and puts a cap in their head. Because that's exactly what they're going to do. There's going to be an elimination, a mass elimination of people in this country. And I can't stand here and watch it. So I have to do something. If that means I got to take some bozo out that's a moron who's demon-possessed, then that's what I'm going to do. Period. Now, in some cultures, some of these things that we talk about, even the way marriage is and all this other stuff, are accepted. But if we base it to the Word of God, is it the truth? No, it's not. So what I want to do here is I want to go through some things, okay? Now, accountability. Now, one of the problems we have today is there's no accountability. And when you don't have accountability, then you have no credibility. If you're not willing to stand up and say, hey, I made a mistake, or let me look at things before I make a decision, before I pass judgment onto you, or something of that alike, then your credibility means that you basically fly off the hammer. You don't have the truth. You're not willing to look for the truth. And when someone comes to you seeking the truth, it's a crapshoot whether they get the truth out of you or not. So your credibility is lost. Now, if you have bias, otherwise let's say you have favoritism towards one particular way of thinking, then you're biased. Then it means that you're governed. That means that you're always going to sway towards a different way. Now, I talked about liberalism. That is a bias that's basically a nail in someone's head. And they're cursed. They're not coming out of it. The line's been drawn. Now, there are some who will, but when I'm speaking across the board. We're talking about thousands and millions of people are not coming out of the great deception that has been placed upon us, including those people within the church. So in reality, that most of these people come out of the college, so then they've been educated beyond their intelligence. That's the saying that my father used to tell me. Because I used to say, well, how could they do such things? They're supposed to be, well, they're educated beyond their intelligence, son. You see, they have a philosophy, regardless of the facts, regardless of truth, regardless of reality, that they take those things that have been taught to them and they apply them and they overrule common sense. Now, if you have facts, then you have proof. And if you have proof, then you should be able to present the facts. Now, when I talk about things and I get people who contradict me or say, where is that? I've gotten to the point where I say, you know what? Go to the internet, look yourself. Your fingers work. Unless they're broken, you can Google a few things. And believe me, there's enough information out there, because they haven't taken everything down yet, that these things, by the time you assess, by the time you calculate it all up, and I can get into that a little bit here, that then the probability is there that this is truth, more than the other way. Okay, so we have to look at that. Now, in order to have that, we have to have a baseline. We have to have a standard. And in that baseline and standard then comes repeatability. In that repeatability, then we're able to project a probability. If something happens enough, then we can estimate that it'll most likely happen again, or within a certain time frame. Okay? Again, going back to analytics. Okay, I was big on that. That's what I lived and breathed it solidly for 7 years. That's all I did. coming up with the statistics, okay? Now, National Bureau of Standards was originally what I dealt with when I started into radio communications, the standards based on current, voltage, wattage, those things that of measurability for a certain component. What was it capable of doing? Did it meet these standards, the National Bureau of Standards? And I can remember the first time that I was involved in that, we were looking at some antenna wire, and we cut 1 foot, measured it exactly, used a micrometer, so it was exactly down to the thousandths, and took it to a scale to measure it to see what its weight was, because it was going to go on a dirigible, meaning that it was going to go on a balloon, and we needed to know the weight, and was this balloon going to be capable of lifting so many feet of coax, which is the name of the antenna wire. And so when we measured it, we just didn't throw it on the scale. We took it and suspended it about 1/4 inch away from the scale, and then dropped it on the scale, and it was in a glass dome that we closed so no air could blow on it. And we measured it. We let it settle, and we measured it, and then we opened it up, and we did it again. We did it 3 times. And then what we did is we took the 3 measurements, because there was always some, because it was down to grams that it was measuring, and micrograms. And so we would take all 3 measurements and then divide it by 3 to get the average. So we didn't just rely on one time. Now, National Bureau of Standards eventually became the National Bureau or the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Now, if anyone's in that type of business, it's NIST. Now, again, without having a verification, without having something that you can reference to, without having something nailed into the ground and tethered, that no matter how far you go, you're only going to go a distance. And so when you go that distance, you always know you will go that exact distance. Okay? Now, the periodic chart, of atoms eventually became known as the periodic table. Did you know that there are at least 5 elements from the beginning of that have been removed from that chart? Now, that's interesting. Why would these elements that are in there be removed? Well, how about that these are so crucial for the complexity of new materials for those things of research that have to do with transhumanism, those things of supernatural, those things that have to that are kept from us, from the public, but are used in the sciences of war. And by the way, many of these things, many of the atoms, many that are on the chart, when they're produced or when they're made, some of them only last a small amount of time. Otherwise, their existence is only for maybe a microsecond. Isn't that bizarre? But yet it's still an element. It's still something measurable. It's still something that has content. Now, again, with these things being removed, the question is why. Now, of course, many elements have been added to it. But again, the standard has changed, right? Because if we have something that we were to reference to from the very beginning and they've removed them, then in reality, this is no longer a standard that we can be verifying that it has truth. Now, if anyone's ever been involved with ISO, like ISO 9000, that's a pain in the rear end. But again, if you're running a business and you need to verify that everything is done the same in one place, otherwise, if you get government contracts, they're going to want you to do ISO. What it means is all your paperwork is done the same. The way you log into the computer is the same. The way you do your passwords are the same. So you can go from one company to another and literally walk in and pick up where you left off. So it's not a bad idea. But unfortunately, it's very costly to do that. Now, the atomic clock, it's not a nuclear physics clock, as some would think, but it's a atomic physics, not a nuclear, but an atomic physics. And it's one of the most accurate timepieces, or is the most accurate. And it is necessary to have such a device because with it, we would, if we did not have it, GPSs wouldn't be capable to the accuracy that they are. Now, you need to remember the GPS wasn't made for the community, it was made for military. And when Clinton was in office, he made an agreement with the manufacturers of like Garmin and TomTom and some of these other companies. There's some other ones. Motorola was, by the way, the founder and the ones who put this in place. That's why I'm very familiar with it. That I'm sure that old Clinton, he got his pockets lined because the encryption that they used at the time to keep it away from the public, to keep it away from, let's say, other countries, you know, like the Chinese and the Soviets and everyone else using the GPS, they encrypted it. But that encryption meant that us as the public, we couldn't use it. So what Clinton did is he went in and he changed those things in his laws and his executive orders, and that then they lifted the encryption. Hence, we now have GPSs that we can use that are, you know, fairly accurate. Because with a GPS, you can send a missile or a rocket exactly right on point, right? So in reality, the other nations, by using our own technology, could bomb us with pinpoint accuracy. So that was a two-edged sword that old Clinton did. Of course, you know, he's a rascal anyways. But anyways, so WWV, okay, the International Atomic Time, for let's say, so when my clock meets it here, in fact, I have an atomic clock here that works off of the radio system, and that when it says 5 o'clock here, even though it'll be a different time, it'll be to the second. And Julie and I talked the other day about there were sacrifices done all over the world at the same time, and I can assure you that that's what they used. Okay, National Bureau Standards time on that. Again, Greenwich Mean Times, and I talked about that a couple shows ago. The UTC used to be there in London, and then when you look over at Greenwich Mean, it's a place that's just east of London that with the ley lines, with the degrees, latitude, longitude, became occultic. So basically Greenwich Mean is 0. That's when the whole world is based on a 0 time, because it's 12 o'clock, right? So you got to base it somewhere, and that's what they do. They've based it there. And so if you've ever wondered what that is, that's what it is. So if it's so important for technology, for the understanding of things to be absolute, in order to have a, quote, standard, then why is our world and population, government, religion not standard? Why is everything variable? Well, obviously, what they intend is to keep us in chaos. Because if we don't have a reference, if we don't have a standard, then we have a variable difference between each other. And your truth, my truth, as I mentioned before, can be different. And so because of this, we're out of sync. We're out of time. I forget what the Indian term for it was, and Julie, you might remember it, meaning the world is out of sync. It's in chaos. It's it's cattywampus. I forget what the name of that is, but anyways, so the point of it is by having everyone on something different. That's why all these different factions of religions, the different denominations, then we're not on the same chart. Just like I mentioned, the last Bible study I went to, everybody had a different Bible. And so we would take turns going around and reading, and people would actually go, you are on verse 23, right? Because that's not what my Bible says. Well, how does that work? How does something that's supposed to be a base, a standard, a cornerstone, that within a group of people does not read the same? So do you understand what's taking place? The lies and the deception, those things that have altered and changed us, have brought us into to not be able to call things out when they're wrong. I keep hearing saying, well, they have some truth, or their heart's in the right place, or they just don't know. Well, that's unacceptable. Because with that attitude, we have what we have today, and that is absolute chaos. No standard, no accountability, no repeatability, no proof, no credibility. It just boggles me. So, Julie, I'm going to bring you in here. I wanted to go over this, and by the way, I wanted to talk about give you an ELF update on the receiver, but I'll talk about that later. So, Julie, you and I were talking, and so I don't know. What do you think? What do you think about all this? Because I know you're frustrated too when it comes to trying to bring the truth. So go ahead.
Well, to anyone out there who is not a believer in Jesus Christ, I wasn't either until 6 years ago. And I spent the better part of my life in the occult, and I'm Native American, so the kind of the Native American belief system. But I also believed there was a God. I just didn't know where he was. And I have looked in everything, and ended up like just kind of in the, speaking to spirits and stuff and not really realizing what I was speaking to. So I am not a Christian. I do not want to be associated with that bunch of people. I just believe in Jesus. I believe he's God. He is God, and I just love him, and he saved my life when demons were trying to kill me. And I wouldn't be here talking to you right now if he didn't do that for me, because they tried to kill me. So anyway, it can seem harmless to talk to spirits, but here's the problem. My whole life I just thought they were dead people or passed over people or whatever, and it turns out that they really aren't, and they aren't who they say they are. So I'm just letting you know that I came from that background, and as of 6 years ago, I definitely changed my mind. But anyway, I do understand you try, here I have come out of an occult life, and, I was a psychic and very well known in the West, where I lived, and a business owner. But I came out of that. I actually, realized by being rescued by Jesus Christ who he was, and he was real. And many people who are in the New Age believe in Jesus. They do, but they're not quite sure. I mean, they're told he's an ascended master, which I can assure you he is not. He is God, okay? And I come out to tell people my story, and I'm supposed to be bringing truth to a whole bunch of lies. And after all my experiences for all my life in the occult and what I came up in, I'm now telling people what I know. I'm exposing the dark side. I'm exposing this whole game of this monopoly game they've got going on. Diabolical narcissism. That's what we're going to do a few shows on, and I'm definitely going to put a lot into that. I'm on a paper right now, a thesis that I'm doing, but I'm telling you, this is diabolical narcissism has crept into every single part of our societies. It is why people are like they are, and they don't want to listen. They don't want to hear anything you have to say. And I find it very, very ironic that I would leave that life and everything that I know about that life, and I would step over here on this side, and then I would try to turn around with my hand reached out to pull people out of what I know to be true, to show them the right way, to tell them, please don't stay where you're at. And I get my hand ripped off by the wolves, so to speak. And I have to say, the New Agers are fairly nice to me, and, they're kind of a nicer group of people, and the so-called Christians are the vipers and the wolves. So that's really what I'm seeing. And I had a counseling appointment with someone today who wanted counseling, and I will tell you that I gave him a couple of hours of my time. And, he's a churched Christian, and you can't get through to him. This is several counseling appointments that he's asked for, And he just, they're so brainwashed in their paradigms that you can't help them. You cannot help them because they refuse to see the truth, you know. And I know a lot of New Agers and people in other walks of life. They know the Christians are brainwashed. They know it. But whatever you're into that isn't the correct Jesus, that's also brainwashing. You know, believing in something that isn't true and defending it with your life when it's really not true. So, you know, Scott, it's very hard to be on this side now and want to reach out and help people so that they do find their way to the truth, and they want to tear your arm off when you're trying to reach out and grab them out of the water. You know, sharks are everywhere, and you're trying to grab them out of the pit of sharks, and they literally, you know, you think a shark got a hold of your arm instead of the person because, you know, I mean, I do what I do out of love. I mean, I just don't want to see anyone. You know, I grew up and I didn't believe in hell. Did not believe in that. Absolutely not. But I have to tell you, for those of you that don't know me, I'm an occult forensic expert, and I study the occult, and I've studied it my better part of my life, and I look at crime scene photos, and I can tell you who did what and what they're into. And I also am a study hieroglyphics, ancient occult, ancient art, Egyptian art, Sumerian, et cetera, and I will show you that there's two sides, and there really is a hell. It really does exist, and I personally did not believe in that, but of all my studies of Sumerian text, Egyptian, story of Gilgamesh, just on and on and on, I do now know that it does exist, and there's a lot of ancient writings to support that. Whether you want to believe it or not, you know, that's up to you. But, you know, Scott, when you try to tell people the truth and you want to help them, and especially, you know, when you said something earlier, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And I'm seeing this in our society. I am seeing this all day long. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. It's like the reins. And I'm sure many of you listening have had this happen to you. You know, there's somebody just said something really bad about you. Right? You just really was mean to you. Right in your, you could go over and say mean, hurtful things back. You could pop them in the face. You could do whatever. But just because you can doesn't mean you should. And how many of you have been victim, raise your hands, to this new growing diabolical narcissism where these people think that they can tell you what you should and shouldn't do? Well, I'm a transgender, and so I say I can use whatever bathroom I want. I don't care if you have a 4-year-old daughter in there. I'm going to whip my winky out if I want to. I don't care what you think. I can do what I want, and you don't have a right to your opinion or feelings. Okay? This is going on with every walk of life. Just because you don't agree with someone, hey, I don't agree with the Catholic Church. I was Catholic. I don't agree with the Protestant churches. I don't agree with Islam at all. But I don't go around knocking people in the head saying, hey, you can't be a Christian. You can't go to that church. You can't. Look, folks, what kind of society do you want? Because now you live in one that pretty soon if you offend somebody, just offend them. That's going to be a capital crime. You say, oh, that's silly. I mean to tell you, it's not. They're drafting legislation right now to do with words of offense. Can't say anything about Muslims. Can't say anything about, I'll say whatever I want. And I don't care for the Muslim ideology, the political ideology. It's not a religion. It's a political ideology of hate and diabolical narcissism. I mean, you can't go around be judging and jury of everybody. You can't just walk up. I don't think you should have that ministry. I don't think you should be able to do deliverance. I don't think you know what? I'm going to see to it that I tear you apart, and I make your life miserable. We're gonna go after you, folks. That is not the way, friends, for us to speak to each other and get along. And especially when the people that do this, a lot of them are supposed Christians, and they go after people. Have you ever been? And I was on that end. Did you ever, as someone who's not a believer in the Christian faith, have you, which I don't believe in what they believe in either, but have you ever felt like they look down on you with that, down their long pointy nose, right? Points a bony finger at you. You know what? They do that to their own people, just so you know. They do it to each other. You would never want one of them to be your wingman in the military. They'll be the first one to shoot you. They'll turn you in for a bounty. That's how bad it is. When even they can't have brotherly love. The whole Bible, this ancient text talks about this, and yet they have no desire whatsoever to follow that book. It's all about diabolical narcissism. It's all about me, 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 me. And if you look across the board, Obama, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, name a politician, name a CEO of a company and the higher-ups in the company, they're all diabolical narcissists. Every one of them. It's all about me. Priests in the church, a bunch of those are diabolical narcissists. That's what's running our whole nation. It's in our school systems. This is why people feel it's their job to go out and social justice, woo, woo, woo. You can't do this, and you can't say anything. You can't speak your mind, especially because it's different from what the diabolical narcissists at the top are telling us we can and can't believe in. See, they're the alpha. You're the beta. You're the beta team, and you're the enforcers of the diabolical narcissists and their agenda at the top. See, that's what it ends up being. But it just amazes me, Scott, how people will, like you said, just because you can doesn't mean you should. You don't go around and destroy someone's life just because you can. Now, I will tell you that a lot of you that know who I am, my husband has been in law enforcement his entire life, and he's been on the homicide and all the different, departments. And one of the things that he said to me about diabolical narcissists is that it's not to kill the person. They enjoy bringing them down. And sometimes they'll even be really nice and they'll forgive them and show them affection, or I should say positive reinforcement to draw them back in so they can destroy them again. This is what they thrive on, their brain. They don't think like you and me. They enjoy taking someone down, literally destroying their soul and their spirit. This isn't just about your body. This is destroying the very soul that is in your body. That's what they do. And I'm seeing this in absolutely mass proportions. It is really terrifying. Don't you think so, Scott?
Well, it was enough that I wrote the book on borderline personality disorder, and that unfortunately, in the chapters, I've mentioned that the political realm, the governments, the heads of state, the heads of country, many of them are borderline. And basically, in the basis of that is narcissism. And in that means that there's no love of your fellow man. And so it's an infliction. They're capable of doing things. And the manipulation is incredible because witchcraft is based in all of that. The spirit realm is right there. As I mentioned before, there's a combination of multiple personalities, alters, and a particular combination of demons. And in that combination, they're able to manipulate, they're able to control, they're able to do things that most people couldn't do. But as we see in Revelation, or we see in the Book of Kings, that it doesn't end well for Jezebel. And even in Revelation 2:20, as I mentioned before, that she'll be thrown into a sickbed. So this is nothing to mess with. I wanted to bring something up here. I've been working with this ELF. I got two ELF receivers, and I put one together for Julie, and I'm working with it. And I finally got the one working, and I took it out into the forest today. Got to get away from static just so I could tune it up and get it to where I needed to. And the reason that I'm working with these things is because of the psychotronic weapons that are being used against us, that in and itself may actually produce the very behaviors that Julie's talking about. The brainwashing, those things of manipulation, mind control, that in and itself, we're seeing the product of that is called gang stalking. Now, in this gang stalking, and Julie, we'll be talking a little bit about that. We'll call it gaslighting. If you don't know what that is, you can look it up. But what it is it's a game of messing with a person's mind. And so you have people who are not looking for a predator. They're not looking for an assailant. Their guards down because they believe that they're in a safe environment. And in that safe environment, in reality, they're in the worst environment they could ever be. And so what you have is people inflicting, projecting, doing, a massive amount of manipulation to an individual that causes them to question themselves. And that's part of what's taking place today with the laws that are being passed, with the media, the way that it's being brought to us about the particular behaviors of the general population, whether it's homosexuality, whether it's letting people into bathrooms, saying yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, back and forth, until the reality of what's right and wrong is mixed, and then there's no more opposition because you've tired them out, and or they don't know what to believe anymore. So this is a psychological warfare against us that has put us in a position that we become lethargic or apathetic. We don't care. Now, I believe that a lot of this is being electronically induced, and along with GMOs, along with the vaccines, along with chemtrail spraying. But this technology, and a lot of it was perfected in California at Berkeley, that the reason I'm working with these receivers is to try and see if I can detect anything that's being sent. Now, it's not cut and dry as I was hoping. It's going to be a little more complicated. In fact, what was really amazing today, that in this ELF frequency band, the spectrum, you're literally listening to the earth moan and groan. You're listening to static charges. You're listening to thunderstorms off in the distance. You're listening to shifts in the ground. And I noticed that as I walked, the static that I was creating as I was walking, that I could even hear it in my headphones. And there was some kind of wasp, kind of a purple thing, that flew by the antenna. And when it was no more than 3 or 4 feet out, I literally could hear it in the headphones, picking up the static charge that the wings were creating as it flew by. It was really bizarre. It was kind of freaky, actually. So again, this is one step in detecting whether this technology to cause us behaviors that could be narcissistic, that could be violent, that could be even sexual. They can do the same thing. They can manipulate where you may have a spouse that's all of a sudden infidelity is now entered into your relationship. And you're wondering, what the heck is going on? Now, we talked about how they can map your brain with something that resembles an iPhone, like a smartphone. And it may actually be a phone with an app that has the transducer and particular antenna in it. And once your brain has been mapped, then it's documented, and it can be sent out to all the gang stalking people. Now, as bizarre and as weird, you better get used to it. You know what, people? It's time to grow up and realize we really do have an enemy out there that is doing everything they can to take us out. And what I've noticed that the original gang stalking victims were mostly women who are alone, women who were widowed or divorced, but now that's starting to migrate into, so they're stepping the game up. Now, this can also be like a tinnitus in your ear. You can have not only but ringing, but you can have what sounds like a waterfall, and it's nonstop. And that in itself, the noise, since you can't get away from it, can cause irritation, can cause you to, be quick-tempered, can cause you to be, to snap at somebody when you wouldn't normally. And so you can have a group of people, and only one of the people within the group is actually being affected by it because they had somehow mapped that person's brain, the alpha, the beta waves, okay, the gammas. And so along with this narcissistic behavior, men will be lovers of themselves, the love will wax cold, those things, hardening of the heart. And I'm going to be going back into matters of the heart. I'm going to be going back into soul ties. I'm going to talk about the relationship that we were intended to have, and what's actually taking place today is verifying, those things of Scripture. And it's here. See, I mentioned the other night, people think that off in the distance, this is going to take place. It's going to be 5 years out, 10 years out, 20 years out. No, it's here. See, you're already in the lie. You're already in the deception. And the very fact that these so-called churches are not addressing any of this tells you that they're intentionally keeping you in bondage, because these are facts. I talked about verification and proof and so forth. Well, I'll tell you what. Come here to my office and sit here with me and deal with the emails and the phone calls of the people who are hearing voices, with the people who are ready to bite a bullet, with the people who can't stand it any longer. They're being terrorized by drones, being terrorized by demons, being terrorized by voices in their head, being terrorized by neighbors, and even family members. This is where we have come to now. And so I don't like talking about this. I don't like bringing it out. I would rather talk about something else. But I would be doing you an injustice. I would be, leaving you to hang if I didn't tell you. So whether you get bored of me talking about it, or you think I'm nuts, or whatever the deal is, I have a job to do, and that's to tell you what I know and let you make your own decision. Now, unfortunately, as Julie was mentioning earlier, that as she gives that information out, as I've run into, that people don't accept it. People don't believe it because they've been brainwashed. They've been put to a standard that they're not capable of receiving anything that disrupts their life. They already have a vision or a mindset on how things are, and then any time you challenge that, that's rejected. And they're not even willing to look at the truth. But see, that's exactly where they wanted you. The Men in Black and others that have dealt with those of the secret societies and those with the underground facilities, the Men in Black are those that come along and eliminate, change, and alter people's willingness to expose the truth by threatening them, basically is what it amounts to. But many of them are quoted as saying, it doesn't matter if you take it to that level, most of them are not going to believe you anyways. And they're right. Again, the psyops that the Pentagon waged against us back in the 50s and 60s really took hold by taking over the education system, by taking over the religious systems, taking over, just basically society as a whole, including the media, because so many of you still rely on the newspaper. So many of you still rely on the news that you get off the TV or cable, and I'm still dumbfounded by that. I can't stand to watch it. You know, I'm not a Trump supporter by any means, but I saw the controlled opposition in order to cause to keep the division going. That the guy, is saying how it was Trump's fault that all the chaos is going on in these cities because he's such a hate monger, right? So this psyop that's taking place, again, for anyone who's liberal will believe that, and then that'll upset anyone who's conservative. But in reality, the whole thing's a lie. Trump is a lie. The left-right paradigm of the politician of politics is a lie, and so by continuing down the road, it's the blind leading the blind. And just as Rockefeller said a couple months ago, he said, you dumb bastards, you deserve what's coming, because what he was saying is you're so stupid that you've bitten everything, you've chewed everything, you've swallowed everything we've given you over the past 100 years, that you're now ripe for the picking. And see, the thing of it is the church, which is supposed to be the representation of God, has not done what it was called to do. So therefore, they have to be a part of it. Now you say, well, they must not have been willing participants. No, that's not true. As Julie and I were talking, they had the Word of God. They had the book. They had the manual. They had the truth. And they denied it. And because we weren't being Bereans, because we weren't testing the Spirit, because we weren't verifying all things, then it slipped by. So that's why I gave the representation of the standard. So what do we base our standard on? What is our life to be dependent? Where do we get our reference from? Because without a reference that we can be, secure in knowing that the outcome will be positive, because we've based our decision making on that reference or truth. That's what it was in that book, the manual called the Bible. But the man who stands up at the pulpit and tells you the lie, he has the accountability on him. Ooh, big stuff. Big stuff. You see, too much is given, much is expected. And even Paul mentioned about that as an educator, he kind of wished that you weren't. Because in your standard of that, meaning that you'll be held to a higher standard before God, because the responsibility of the information that you gave his people, that if you cause your brother to stumble, if you cause them, just as be better than a millstone is around your neck, if to take one of these little ones and lead them astray. You need to remember that God sees us as little children. And so that really goes for all of us. We must humble ourselves. We must become as. But you know what? That means then that we have to look at the world with wondering eyes. I was at the gym today, and I had to wait as this mother had this little toddler, and the little guy was just a tiny thing, and he probably just learned to walk. And so she was being very patient with him, trying to bring him through these doors. And his eyes were just in wonder of everything that he was seeing. And it was one of the most wonderful, beautiful, magical things to ever witness. To see somebody of so pure of heart, that has no evil, that has nothing that has been brainwashed into his head yet, to see everything for the first time. And that was where God wants us. Because in that, we're teachable. See, right now, the world is no longer teachable. Not teachable of the truth, anyways. I mean, and yesterday when I was, I'm here in North Idaho, and this is just such an incredibly beautiful place right now. The spring, and we've had all these rains, and everything is so green, and the fields, the farmers' fields are sprouting. And there was two horses, and one horse apparently thought he was in charge because he kept, trying to commandeer and steer the other horse to do whatever he wanted to do as I drove by, and it was kind of comical. But, when it comes to that, you have those who are in charge and you have those who follow. I found out real quickly when I was in the technical field, regardless of who came out of what education system for the jobs, that you either have an intellect for it or you don't. I mean, not everyone's meant for every job. You maybe that's what you want to do, but you have no business being there, right? Because not everybody can get up on the stage and sing. And so there are those who lead and there are those who follow. And so those who lead have a responsibility. Because in that responsibility, in order to lead the rest of them, you need to lead them in truth. And unfortunately, the pastors have not done that. And as I've told you, this capstone, this pyramid, this corporate structure that has nothing to do with the Word of God is not the basis of how a house of God is to be run. And because we bought into that from the seminaries, from that education system that came from the Zionists, from those things, then we look to a man for our truth who in himself is fallen, who is in error, is not perfect. And that was never the intent of God. Okay? Now, here we are today in a predicament that at any time, very quickly, Obama himself, he's a rascal, right? With all the executive orders, with the troops that are on the ground, with the FEMA camp intake, meaning there are people being rounded up and taken there and executed. The fact that this society isn't screaming out that we're not coming to arms, that we're not being boisterous about it. The only ones really talking about this seem to be Julie and I, at least on this type of media. Then how do we, when we stand before God, what's your excuse? And Julie was asking me today, said, why would God have me even talk to this individual? And I said, because he heard the truth, and now with his decision that he's made, when he stands before God, he won't have an excuse. So he will be found wanting. The scales are not going to be balanced. He will be held accountable because the truth has been told to him, and he has rejected that truth. And so again, as he stands before the Lord, there will be no excuse. All right, Julie, I didn't mean to go so long, but I don't know if you want to pick up from that one. Go ahead.
You know what, Scott? I know that if people listen and they may not believe in God or whatever, but we do believe in Jesus, and I have to, like I said, I'm only 6 years on this side, but I'll tell you, he exists. He's real, and you will stand before him, whether you like it or not. You'll stand before him if you claim to be one of his or are one of his, but you'll stand before his Father, which I would not want to stand before him, because that's where you're going to stand if you do not believe in Jesus. You're going to stand before God the Father. Believe me, that is no place for you to be, because anyone that goes to stand in front of him is not going to fare well. So I'm just telling you, that's what I believe. And I'm here to help you see things that other people don't see. Most of you are not involved in the occult. Most of you never have been. Most of you just, that are probably from whatever walk of life. So my job is to show you where we're at and to show you what my ex side used to do, how we used to go, how things are planted on that side to make you believe lies so that you'll never find your way to Jesus Christ, okay? And whether I was willingly, knowingly participating in that or not, which I wasn't, I didn't willingly know that's what I was doing, but I still would have to answer for that, okay? We have to answer for what we do. But I will tell you that these people in this government are perpetrating a lot of stuff on all of you. And you don't know, like I tried to warn the guy today. I tried to show him, don't you get it? He literally would say, I don't believe you. And then I would show him a picture of the very person he said, I don't believe he does that, doing that. And he'd say, what? Well, I didn't know he did that. It's one thing after another that I hear, well, I don't believe you. Well, I don't believe you. You know, when somebody has come out of the dark side and they're testifying to this and they're trying to explain to you what is going on, we learn to speak a different language than you do. I will say this again for the people who don't know this. Among the occultists, here's how it works. You have 3 people standing there. 2 of them are witches. One of them is just a civilian, okay? And the one witch looks to the other witch and says, hey, I saw you at the market yesterday. And the other one goes, oh, yeah. And the girl who isn't the witch, all she heard was that one went to the grocery store and they saw each other at the grocery store. That's not what was just said. There's a market, but it's not the grocery store. It's a whole other place entirely of rituals. Get my point? See, we learn a language. We learn to read and see things that you guys don't see. We learn English words and phrases that you think it means one thing. That is not what we meant. Okay, we learn to read past the story that's printed in the newspaper because we see things that are code and tell us what's really going on. You guys don't see that because you weren't trained that way. So my job is to tell you what you don't see so that you can be aware of what's happening around you. How many people out there believe there was a shooting in Orlando and people got killed? How many believe that? Tell you, but if you say you do believe it, you're wrong. Didn't happen. Isn't that something? But I saw the girl and there was blood. No, you saw actors with fake blood. Just like Sandy Hook didn't happen. Just like the Virginia Tech shooting. Killed 32. The gunman turned the gun on himself, killed himself 33. 33 is one of the highest occult numbers there is. The entire story is grafted and written so that people like me who know how to read that are going to say, oh, okay, it was a false flag. Yeah. It's gun control. Do you understand? It's gun control to further the agendas that the government has. Gun control. I have guns, people. Okay? Been hunting my whole life. Never have my gun shot a person, not once. Never. Never shot anybody. No way. I care about people's lives too much to be going around doing that. Okay? So they want to take away the guns, and that means from the people who actually do care about people's lives and would protect other people with their guns. Right? I'm from the border of Mexico, U.S., grew up in both nations. Gun control is in Mexico. It doesn't work. People can't just all go grab guns there and own guns. They tried to outlaw that. It doesn't work. As you can see, Mexico is a place where a lot of people die from guns. So gun control does not work. All right? They want to further what else? The number one thing they like to do to you guys is what? Fear, panic, and terror. Because these supernatural forces that are guiding all of this, yes, there are supernatural forces guiding it, they love and feed on fear, panic, and terror. It is cocaine to them. It is heroin to them. It is methamphetamine to them. This is how they live. The more they get, the bigger they get. You understand? They love fear. So your sold-out satanic governments are feeding you full of fear. Be very afraid. First it's Al-Qaeda, and then it's, Saddam Hussein and Al-Qaeda and, whoever they named, they call the boogeyman. First it was them, and now it's Saudi Arabia. They're the ones that did the 9/11 attack. No, your government did that, along with the Israeli Mossad. Okay, that's who did that. They want to scare you. Okay, this is what they do. So in their stories, they tell another story. Let me give you a little example, okay? 49 people were supposedly shot at a gay nightclub, okay? This is what that tells me. 4 plus 9 is 13. That's one of their very big occult numbers. Then you keep going, and it goes, oh, he's 29. Master Mason number. 2 plus 9 is 11. Okay, that's a Master Mason number. That's one of the master occult numbers. Okay? And they talk about how many he killed, how many he wounded. 5 times 3 is 15, and 1 plus 5 is 6. That's right there. And I'm reading the story, and I'm going, okay, everything in here, all right, the way they're wording it, and then all of the numbers, all the gematria, because I read numbers. Remember, I read the occult. There was a place that this guy was from. He was actually from a place that was not 120 miles away, but they put 120 miles away because it's 1 plus 2 is 3. You see, this is how they talk to each other. They do signs, symbols, numbers, gematria. Okay, this is how they do it. All right, now remember, they do this because they want to instill fear. Okay, that's what they do. They want you to be afraid. So that's what when I come in and say, hey, this didn't even happen. I'll tell you right now, it didn't happen. None of this happened. None of it. It's a complete hoax, the whole thing. So from reading that and numerous other articles, the mom, nobody ever knew that he had any hatred. He was bipolar, but you know what? It's the same thing. It's the same thing over and over, okay? This is the story that they tell every time. And just like the Christina Grimmie, I've been looking into that. I'm absolutely startled by the pyramids that are flashing all over the place. As she sings in a concert, she's singing right behind her. Pyramids flashing. Right behind her. There's one right behind her. I'm looking at the times. There's no footage. I'm looking at all these things and numbers and dates. Everything is screaming, this is a hoax. Okay? Most of your media, most of your news is manufactured. And it's all to create an agenda. It's called the Hegelian dialectic, okay? Problem, reaction, solution. They create the problem, you scream out for the solution, and then they give you the solution that they wanted to do in the first place, but you wouldn't have let them do it unless they created the problem to scare the crap out of you, so now they can. Okay? That's what these guys do. Problem, reaction, solution. So I am telling you, do not be afraid. Do not show fear of any kind. No fear whatsoever. Because that's what they want. Don't believe these media stories. They're lies. You can, every time there's any of these stories, I'm going to be weighing in on this show. You can come and listen, and I will tell you if it was real or not real. Okay? It was a hoax, the whole thing. And by the way, I've been on the disaster team for years. I've trained with San Bernardino, Riverside, all of that. And I'm telling you, every single thing they did, you could tell it was all training. There was nobody even wounded. Well, she had blood right. You know what? She had what looked like blood. The tourniquet was in the wrong place. How do you have a tourniquet down here when the wound is way up here? Don't forget my medical background, okay? You know, the whole thing was completely lopsided. I'm looking at injuries and tourniquets, and I'm going, what? Are you kidding? So this was not a true thing that happened. You have to remember these people are trying to gain control of this nation through fear and taking away your rights, taking away your weapons so you can defend yourself. If a tyrannical government, you have to be able to defend yourself against it. And if you guys believe that they're not doing that, you need to look around and become more informed. But you know, Scott, that's just one of the many ways that our society in the background is being guided by supernatural forces, and many people don't believe in supernatural forces. But, I'm sorry to tell you, if you go back and read every text ever written, Sumerian text, go read them. Gilgamesh, all these ancient texts. There are supernatural beings, and some of them are evil, and they want this world to be engulfed in flames because you, my friend, all of you friends, are made in the image of God, and they hate you because you're so beautiful, because you're made in the image of God. And I don't care if you weigh 300 pounds or 200 pounds or you're skinny as a twig like me. It does not matter. God made you in his image, and that's a powerful statement. And because he wishes none should perish and he loves you guys, all of you, that's why they hate you. Because when they look at you, they see the beauty and the creation, the wonderment that is you, that he made. And they don't have redemption. These fallen angels, by the way, just so you guys know this, they never did see God. You know that, right? They never met God. Maybe if you go read history and go back and read ancient texts, you'll find that out. They never actually met God the Father. They screwed up and they fell. And they never had the chance to know what you're going to have the chance to know, God the Father. They knew Jesus. They didn't know him. So they don't want you to get to go somewhere and know the one that created you. They'll never see him. They'll never go there. They're remanded out. They never have grace. They never have mercy. We have grace and mercy provided by Jesus. So even if you don't believe in Jesus, maybe you'll go look this stuff up, and maybe you'll get, go look at, send me articles if you want, and I'll tell you, bogus or non-bogus. The Paris thing, that didn't happen either. You guys, you need to understand how the occultists work, and this is how they work. It's trying to achieve an agenda, and however they have to do that, they're going to do it. That's what they do. So there you go, Scott. I mean, they are really working right now at trying to scare people, fear-monger people. And, yes, there are bad things happening. Technology to take over your mind and try to dominate your mind. Yes, that's happening. But we come and tell you this stuff so that you'll be aware of it, so that you will know. And you know what? Scott's working on a project right now. If he can finish, he's Mr. Electrical Engineer over here. If he happens to be able to finish this project and it's successful, then you guys may have a way around be able to send those signals right back to them and blow up their box. Okay? So let's just let us keep you informed of what's going on. Every single one of these false flags, you just go ahead and write me, email me if you have a story, anything, and I will weigh in on it and let you know if it happened or it did not happen. And Scott, this is the best I can do as a former occultist, is to try to take what I know about them and how they operate and show people how they operate so that they will know and they will not get, how many people are going to start screaming, we want peace and security, take the guns away, how many people are going to start doing that? And none of the things that they're fighting for ever really happened. They were able to be fooled. So I think that's mostly my job, is to keep people from being fooled into these things,
Well, you talked about the shooting, and so we have to look at the statistics. And then with that statistics, because of what's happened in the past with the false flags, that the probability is that they were false. And so when you weigh everything out, and as you look, pointed out the occult numbers, once again, the probability of those numbers equaling every time something happens to come out to occult numbers statistically shows us that yes, that's what happened. That this thing again was another staged event. Stockholm syndrome, if you remember with Patty Hearst, that's what made that popular or brought to the forefront for people. But what it basically means is if you're held in captivity, you eventually have compassion towards your captor. You may sympathize with them. It used to be they would talk about sympathizers for Nazis, those who had compassion, those who had, good feelings towards them. What we have today is we have a massive Stockholm syndrome where we're actually having compassion for the government. We're actually having for our captors, because what we have is tyranny. This is tyranny being perpetrated upon us. Now, of course, those who are conservative and those who know the difference aren't accepting this. But again, with the psyops, with the brainwashing, with the media and everything else, that just as Julie said, that we'll be screaming for the government to come and protect us, to take our guns away. And this, by the way, would just be more repeating of history. This supposedly is what our forefathers feared and tried to put in place with the checks and balances to make sure that this didn't happen. But unfortunately, because, good men doing nothing, we're now in this predicament where we have people who aren't even human, tyrants, narcissistic, evil, are running everything. Now, even if I, succeed with these devices, and I'm going to keep at it, there's still the spirit realm. There's still those things that have nothing to do with electronics. At least I don't know. Who knows? There may be something here. There may be something here. If they're a dimensional thing, then possibly. I don't know. We'll see. But the fact of CERN's trying to open up, trying to pull that veil back, then possibly in a smaller scale something like that can happen. But when it comes to spirituality, then again it's understanding who we are, understanding that we do have the power and authority to stand against these things. As I wrote in my book, Second Heaven Invasion, in the last chapters, that I discussed this. I discussed this technology. I discussed the fact that we're dealing with a spiritual entity, but we're also dealing with a physical. But within the physical, since it is an abomination because it's transhumanism, then it's demon-possessed. Its soul in itself is demon-possessed because it's an abomination. It does not have the Spirit of God. So in itself is a living demon in front of you. I don't know whether you thought about that or not. Because as I said before, the fact that it did not come from God and was created for something else, that this stinky, big, hairy thing in front of you, when it dies, its soul, if it doesn't transfer into someone else or the essence goes over as we see the soul capturing, if this is a spirit that can leave and go into the spirit realm, that what you have is a living demon in front of you, just as it was in the days of Noah, just as it was with Enoch. I mean, that's pretty bizarre. And when you see these things, and by the way, that's why the cloaking on the TV, why these reptilians, that they cover them to make them look like they're human, because just as, Julie's sending me videos all the time, when that mechanism fails and you can actually see their eyes, you then immediately realize there's nothing human about them. There's nothing that reveals to us that they have compassion, that they have reasoning, that they have the ability to comprehend that what they're doing is wrong. Well, it doesn't matter for them whether they know they're doing wrong or right. They're going to continue doing what they do. And see, that's where we need to understand that no matter in that fact, that if we have one standing before us and we say, hey, why don't you and I just go have a cup of coffee and let's talk about it. As you finish saying that, they cut your throat. See, they're going to do what they're going to do. And the way the church has taught the Christians is that there's a reasoning that we can negotiate with evil. I've said that before. You cannot negotiate with evil. You have to eradicate it. You have to end it. You have to stop it. And again, I've talked about the church doesn't do deliverance, so then therefore a church is full of demons. if you buy a home, let's say you go to an auction and you buy a house, and you only had a short time to look at it, to inspect it, to figure out what your bid was going to be, and you didn't realize that the house was infested with roaches, was infested with rats, was infested with mice, and all kinds of horrible creatures that bring disease, that lower the value of your home. And so what do? You have to bring in an exterminator. You have to bring in something or somebody who's capable of removing these things so the health of the environment is brought back to standard, that it's livable, because who wants to live amongst all of that stuff? Because, if they're living and they have droppings, and just the very thought of them being in there. So when you have people who are infested with demons, there's you are adjusting yourself to the predicament. Some people, unfortunately, and we look at the way some people live, they must like roaches. Has anyone ever been, worked with, been a manager for an apartment complex, and someone moves out and you thought they were the nicest person and well kept and mannered and everything else, and you went in the house and holy schmokies, you got to go in there with a pitchfork. You got to pull the carpet out because they live like pigs. Well, unfortunately, there are those people in their soul are the same way. Hence the book, Pigs in the Parlor. Some people actually like their demons. I've come to that conclusion. There's no question about it, because they do not want to change their behavior. Now, those who have personality disorders, okay, by the standard, otherwise we are a group of people that live in a community and we have a commonality amongst us, and then there's this wild card over in the corner. Well, this individual then would be found as having a personality disorder, just as an example. And in that personality disorder, their thinking is not like everyone else's logic. They don't think like everyone else. They misbehave. They don't have accountability. You can't trust what they say. They're violent. They'll do anything. So you don't trust them. You got to watch them, right? Well, what I have found is they don't want to change. They like the way they are. Doesn't matter how they inflict their behavior onto everyone else, how everyone else is being tormented, how everyone has to bend over and basically take it from them. This is a situation that has absolutely infested into the churches, that there are people within that church that should never be there, because they're never going to change, they're never going to repent, they're never going to go through deliverance. They're going to do everything they can to avoid deliverance. As I told you before, if somebody truly has borderline personality disorder, they're never going to come through this door in my office. If they do, they're going to be court-ordered. In fact, most people who have borderline personality disorder who are in therapy are there because a court sent them there. Or they're institutionalized, or they're incarcerated because their behavior was unacceptable to society. And the bottom line is they don't want to change. Now, they may be tormented. They may go through psychotic episodes where they'll act like they're going to change, but the moment that you actually put them through the paces to rectify the situation, they will do anything they can to avoid that from happening. And that means even inflicting harm on you, projecting onto you, word cursing you, doing just about anything that it takes. And unfortunately, I'm starting to see the behaviors of most people pretty much mimic that. That I think that borderline personality disorder is at an epidemic level. I believe that it's at an all-time high. And again, with this narcissistic behavior, this what Julie's talking about, what she'll be presenting, that in itself shows the level of demonization. Now notice I said demonization. Let me redefine that since we're on a new show here. You have those people who are, quote, possessed. Okay? That means they're at a point of no return. That means that the demons, they have sold their souls, or they have come to a point that their conscience are seared. They're no longer able to have love of others, and so they continue in an evil behavior that inflicts harm onto others. And in that evil that is perpetrated, it's actually demons acting out their ugly nature through the individual that have been given a legal right by the individual, hence the show. In that legal right, then the demons can do whatever they want, and they do. And since the person is a, quote, human, you as an individual who may be a professing Christian have no authority over the human. You have authority over the demons, but the human have given the demons a legal right to act out their nature. So that makes an individual with those behaviors a very dangerous person. Hence, we have those in the government. We have those in corporations. We have them running the cities and the counties. We even have them in law enforcement. We have them in the military. We have them in the Pentagon. We have them in the banking systems. We have them in the churches. Well, I tell you what, if you haven't dealt with a Jezebel yet, I mean a snarling, snapping, slobbering, biting Jezebel, then you ain't seen nothing yet. Because I tell you what, once you've been bit by one, you look around every corner you walk up to now. When you find out what they're capable of doing, okay, they can be a professing Christian within a church. They've sucked you into thinking that they're godly people, and next thing you know, you're holding your throat because they just slashed you. And when you realized that they're capable of inflicting harm to a level that brings in rejection, abandonment, betrayal, being betrayed is a very, very deep wound. And many of you in the church have been betrayed. And that deep wound has affected you that your walk with God has been tainted, has been altered, has been changed. And you need a healing. And in that altar, or in that wound, is a demon. It'll be a demon of anguish, hatred, rebellion, those that want to come back, that they're always looking for vengeance, okay? And this is why you can't let it go. This is why no matter what you've tried to do, you read the Word, you do this, you have someone pray for you. Well, you didn't get the wound healed, and you didn't get the demon out. And so in your walk, you've continued this behavior. And that's even in society. It doesn't mean it has to be in the church. But the church denies that they got roaches. The church denies that there's pigs in the parlor. And so we've got an elephant in the room that nobody wants to pay attention to or admit that it's even there. And because of that, people perish. People are in bondage. People are constantly going through trials that didn't need to because the demons are acting out their ugly nature on the people that should be empowered by the blood of Christ, by able to do those things. But instead they're in bondage. And what a terrible thing. Now, another thing before I hand it back to you, Julie, you talk about fallen angels. Schofield and some of the other teachings teach that all the fallen angels are bound in chains. Now, we see in Jude that there's those that left their own abode are. We see in the book of Enoch, the 200 that did their thing are. Okay? But those are only a certain number. If there's a third of them, there's potentially millions and millions of these that are around. Now, I've had in my office fallen angels manifest within people. So they're out there. So we need to understand that there's adversaries that aren't just demons. They're very powerful, very wise fallen angels. Now, they don't have the full angelic power they had before. They're not able to do all the things. Because they're fallen, they fall under the authority of Christ when we exercise it. But unfortunately, most of us don't know how to do that. And so these things get away with murder. And murder they do. They love murder. They love torturing. They love doing things to innocent people. And the thing of it is when you realize they're doing it to children, you should be absolutely infuriated. Because all these children that are being executed, quote, abortion, is under the influences of fallen angels. And the people that are doing it are demon-possessed. And again, getting back to the demon possession versus being demonized, if you're demonized, then your body, your brain has a demon. Your spirit, because you've submitted to Jesus Christ, you believe onto Him, then your soul isn't going to be taken over. But you can be demonized. And so I in my book, what I've done is I've put a level of infection, a level of that of the quantity and the types of demons. So when you come into my office, what I do is I assess where you're at. What was the legal right? What's the stronghold, the sin? What generational curse do you have on you? And what demons are in you? Now, I've been doing it long enough, I can pretty much, tell what's what. And then plus the Holy Spirit leads, later on during the deliverance. But I can tell you that fear is based in everybody. And if we haven't been given a spirit of fear, then obviously it comes from Satan. And in that fear, you can have Stockholm syndrome. You can have, you can become apathetic to your accuser, to your assailant, because you would rather submit to them than challenge them and face opposition. Okay, many men, they don't want, when it comes to a wife that's pretty strong in the relationship, they would rather let the wife get away with it because they just don't want to deal with having to stand up to them. And in that comes, these spirits that submit. Because any time that you have a Jezebel situation, you have an Ahab. And so with that fear, being fear-based, then we're willing to allow things to take place within us that we would not normally do. And because we do that, then we're not doing what we've been called to do. And so in reality, then we're rebellious. We're not doing what we've been called. That's why we have to have deliverance. And tomorrow night, like I mentioned, I'm really going to hit it hard. And if you don't want to hear what I got to say, then don't listen to me tomorrow night, because I'm not pulling any punches. We're out of time. Ladies and gentlemen, the life you save may be your own. And as I mentioned before, and I wrote this in my book, that one of the reasons you need to protect yourself, the reasons you need to fight back, is because you've been called. You're not listening to this broadcast by accident. You're not listening to the others' archives by accident. We're trying to teach you who you are, and that we're in a battle. And just as I mentioned that in a plane, that when there's a breach in the hull of the plane and the oxygen levels drop, and the oxygen masks drop out, and you may be the parent, you've got 2 children, your first reaction may be to take those masks and put them on the kids. But in reality, what you're supposed to do is put it on yourself. And the reason is because if you go unconscious, then there's nobody there to help the kids. And that will surely bring disaster. So by taking care of yourself, getting yourself in a position that you can now deal with the circumstances, then you can put the masks on the children. In that order. It doesn't take long anyways. But they don't talk about this. But there's a type of euthanizing of animals that's a vacuum chamber. And as terrible as it is, instead of injecting something into them, they put them in a vacuum chamber and they suck the air out of them in a microsecond, and their lungs collapse. So if you're at a certain altitude and you lose your breath of air, you can go unconscious real fast. It isn't like you just all of a sudden, you're holding your breath in the water for 30 seconds. It doesn't work that way. So just understand that at any point in time, and I'm giving this as a reality check, that when things start happening, they're going to happen very rapidly, unexpectedly, maybe in your sleep. We're warned, we hope that your flight, we pray that your flight is not going to be in winter, because that means that when you head out the door in a disaster situation and it's 0 degrees outside, you could just simply perish for exiting the house. So please, just get ready for everything. Understand what we're trying to bring to you, because, again, as I mentioned, that little boy that woman was bringing into the gym, it was a little bit of an inconvenience to wait for the child to come through. But, okay, oh well, this isn't a world of hurry up. But it was so funny to see that little boy, to see things for the first time, and pretty soon he'll be going, what's that? And hopefully he'll have parents that will teach him the correct things. And if you didn't have that as a child, if you had parents that neglected you or abandoned you, then you have these spirits in you. And you've based your life and your salvation and your walk on that hurt and pain, because you're not living, you're surviving. And so everything we're trying to do is to get you out of survival mode into a life mode, into a fight mode. Because children deserve to be children. And because of what's being done today with this perversion, the pedophiles, those who want to take these kids, ladies and gentlemen, we have a job to do. The protection and the safety of these children, we've already dropped the ball when it comes to abortion. There will be accountability. So we've got a lot of catching up to do and a lot of work to do. Julie, we've got about 20 minutes. Go ahead and follow up, and then I'll close it out. Okay?
Okay. Well, for anyone who is not a believer in Jesus Christ, I do want to address you more so than anyone who is, because I used to be where you're at, and not so long ago. And I realized that the Christian churches have taken the name of Jesus and just totally stomped it. And you hear that name and you go, ugh, when I hear this, that's what I said when a lady tried to tell me, who he was. But the truth of the matter is, you know what, he really does exist. And those people in those buildings, they don't even know who he is. Okay? They don't know who he is. They think they do, but they don't. And what Scott's trying to say is that, now this was before I knew Jesus. I did not have protection against them. Okay? I did not have that protection against them. You think you do, but you don't. And once I realized what was going on, and whenever I did, I read this book that she gave me. It was a Bible, and I was, wow, this is a big book. And I started reading this text, and I was reading through all these texts, and I was looking at, all the ancient texts I'd studied, and I found through archaeology Jesus was real, and I went, oh my gosh, he was really, really existing, did those things. Wow. And I was like, wow, the world doesn't want people to really know that. And I find it odd. I used to sit back and go, okay, hold on. You can't talk about anybody. You can't talk about Jesus. You can talk about Buddha, Muhammad. Now, this is before I was a believer, okay? I used to look at stuff like that and go, well, what's wrong? How come you guys can all talk about what y'all want, but she can't talk about Jesus? Now, I didn't believe in Jesus, but I would see stuff like that and go, what's up with that? I go, so she believes in Jesus. She can believe in him, and she should be able to talk about him. How come you guys are being rude to her? That's not nice. And I would take up for people who believed in Jesus or anything. I'm saying, hey, if he believes in Buddha, you can't be telling him, you know. So I was that kind of person before I even knew who Jesus was. And I remember people would make comments about all these different religions, and I would say, you know, religion is made by men. Men created this stuff. It has nothing to do with. If there is a God, he sure ain't going to those places. That is not where he's going, because those people are completely off. I mean, go look at them. So I thought that they don't even resemble anything like that. So I would tell people, if there is a God, he can't be there. He has to be somewhere else. There, you know, so when I finally did read this text, this biblical text, I started getting a picture in my mind of who this guy was. Jesus. Oh, well, and it didn't match with the picture that I would get in the church. I actually went to a church for a little while. Didn't work out so well. But I went, and everything they would say, I would get into this text, right? And this is their book, right? Not mine. This is their book. And I'm looking in this book they gave me to read, and everything they were saying in there wasn't in the book. I'm going, it's not even in this book. What are they talking about? So I started to really question all these different people in these places, and knowing I don't think anybody really had it right. So that's why I did what I did, and I would encourage you to do the same thing, because all these ancient texts, let me tell you, if there was no Jesus, this is what I've learned. If there was no Jesus, why can't he be talked about in the military? Did you know he can't even say his name in the military? Talk about Muhammad, Buddha, anything. The guy was fired for saying the name of Jesus in his office. Okay, you can't say his name there. You can't talk about him in a courtroom. You can't talk about him at school. You can't talk about him in universities. You can't talk, I mean, this is like, you can't talk about this Jesus fella anywhere. I mean, people are going to jail, okay, because they're doing this. But they can talk about Islam and Muhammad and then Buddha and all this other stuff, and nobody blinks an eye. Then these supposed aliens coming from outer space, not. They're demons and fallen angels. How do I know? Because I've been out there in the spirit realm, astrally traveling outside my body. They're not aliens. They're not getting out of the firmament. There's a dome over the earth. Hello? Read the ancient text. And not just biblical text. Read them all. Hindus, my people, my ancestors, the Cherokee, they knew it. The Navajos knew it. The Paiutes knew it. The Apaches knew it. Everybody knows it, except for the people here today in this world. These things, how come they never say, oh, Muhammad isn't good and he's not real and Buddha's not really ascended and this and that? How come they never pick up? Now, this is before I believed in Jesus. I would say, how come these aliens never pick on anybody else's belief system except for the Jesus one? How come they always say that Jesus is just an ascended master and he's not, and there's one that's over him named Seth, get it? Yeah, Satan, Seth. I was like, how come they never pick on anything else? Islam is the most filthy, foul political ideologue. Look, religion of peace, everywhere they go, they kill people. There's war, no peace. Hello? Use your brain. 1 + 1 is 2. And I'm going, how come they never pick on these other dudes? It's always that Jesus guy. They always talk about him and how he's not real. Or if he is, he's just an ascended master. Then I started looking at religion. I go, wow, all these religions, they all demote him. Like this Jesus guy, he's demoted. He's always at the bottom of the totem pole. He's an ascended master. He's an incarnation of that. I go, isn't it funny that all these aliens know who Jesus is? How is it in a universe supposedly that vast, they all know who he is? Now you tell me how that works. If he's not God, how is it that every one of these millions upon millions of aliens know who Jesus is. Come on. Are you serious? There got to be one of them little grays running around that don't know who he is. Come on. They all know who he is. And they all tell you the same story. Oh, he's not that thing. No. And they always say, in this Christianity thing, this believing in Jesus thing, you have it all wrong. It's all wrong. That's not the way it really works. He's just an ascended master. Why? Why did they pick on this Jesus guy? I used to sit back and I'd scratch my head and go, why? No, they never say anything else about any. So, Scott, I used to go, if this Jesus character isn't real, then why is it that his name causes such a panic everywhere you go? How come nobody can say his name without getting looked at like they've lost their mind? And why is it these aliens always say they never pick on anybody else, just this Jesus guy? And how is it billions of aliens actually know who Jesus is? See, if you're an occult forensic expert or I'm an investigator, and I'm looking at this, I'm looking for facts, right? I'm looking for facts. I'm taking notes. And I take down all the notes I just said, and I sit back and I go, if I did not know better, I would think possibly this Jesus guy might not be who these aliens are saying he is, and he might just be what those people say he is. He might be God. Because if you think about it, they all know him, and they all bash him. But then there's all these texts, these ancient texts, even secular texts, that talk about this dude and all the stuff he did, and all these miracles, and that he was nailed to, and he really did die crucified, and all this stuff. And I'm going, there's all this archaeology and ancient text to prove he is who he says he is. There you go. So for you guys that don't believe, I'll tell you, you need to go do some homework, because I'll tell you what, there's something to that when the aliens are even saying, oh, no, you don't want to, he's not, no, he's not that. Don't you think that's kind of odd, Scott, that they do that?
Yeah, I've had people, they want to, say we should only be using the other names of Jesus, but it's the name of Jesus that the demons flee, and so that's all I use, and that's all the proof I need. So
I just thought it was funny because they always bang on that name, and like I said before, I was ever a believer in him. I used to sit back and go, man, why does everybody bang on that dude? I mean, how come they're not, obviously Muhammad was a child molesting, child rapist, murderer. They don't ever say anything about him. So, you kind of get suspicious after a while, especially if you're just out kicking it and somebody's talking about whatever and somebody brings up Jesus and then people start attacking them. You're kind of going, even as a non-believer, I would go, whoa, hold on. Why are you attacking this girl? She believes in Jesus. Well, yes. Whoa. Would you like it if she did that to you, if you believe in Buddha or the New Age? Would you like that? I don't think you'd appreciate her doing that to you. Why can't she believe in Jesus? She can believe in him. You can't be. And I used to stick up for people who believed in whatever. I was not about to see people get run over because they believed in something that the other 2 or 3 people did not. But I never heard anybody bang on anybody else. They never banged on Muhammad. They never did. None of these guys. None of them. Only when somebody bring up the name of Jesus. So I just thought it was odd because I used to say, that's really weird that everybody got a thing with this guy. Nobody want to hear his name. Like, why do you not want his name mentioned? What's wrong with his name? I mean, in my language, it's Jesus. Jesus Cristo. So I think Jesus is a cool name. I'm like, what is that? But you see, even before I knew who he was, Scott, I could see the prejudice against that name in everywhere. Schools, personal, conversations people would have, and, all across the country I was seeing the problem with this name. And you know what? I got to tell you, brother, when everybody is trashing that name and you go read about this dude and he was real, you start going, detective work says there's got to be something else to this. And I started reading that biblical text, and it said, everyone they hated me, they'll hate you. And I said, that's it. See, he predicted that. And I saw that, and that's why I'm bringing it up, because if you don't believe in Jesus, I'm not pushing him on you, but I'm just telling you, please go do your homework, because the dude's real. I got to tell you, I called on him, and he showed up. So I will tell you, the man's real. And not only that, but he really loves you, all of you. Right on, Scott?
Absolutely. In fact, when we talk about legal rights, the blood of Jesus Christ, he paid the price, and so that legal right is canceled. But we need to repent. Now, there's some teachings that say that we don't need to. But you know what? If you're in the office here and you've got demons and they're manifesting, they're not coming out till you repent. Now, generational curses can come in many forms. They can come in with the curse of the bastard. They can come in Freemasonry. They can come with murder. They can come with, unfortunately, poverty. Poverty is probably one of the bigger ones. But we also see early death, premature death, suicide. We see, the inability to stay faithful to a spouse. That's another one, by the way. So if you have infidelity within a family, it's a curse. Because what happens when you then commit adultery, then you keep a curse going, or you give legal rights for more curses or more sin, more demons. And the more demons you get, now, unfortunately, a lot of the people that I've been working with lately are pretty bad. In fact, some of the worst demon infestations that I've seen has been recently, and it's heartbreaking. They've gone all these years in absolute torment. Nothing's worked right. They've been sick, going from one relationship to another. Rejected by people, and then some of the curses, by the way, are not is hypersexuality. Even pedophile is a curse. I mentioned before that I was working with a gentleman that he was already a 2 or 3 time convicted child molester. He had done his time, and he was having, he was getting the itch again. And instead of acting out in his emotions, letting the demons act out their nature through him is really what it amounted to, that he came into the Deliverance ministry when I was there in Arizona. And as I worked with him, it turns out that the curse, the entry of the curse was he had an uncle who had committed murder. And when that door was open, somehow that fell onto him. And along with it came the perversion demons. Now, as I mentioned before, that when it comes to this type of behavior, that these individuals that have these types of demons will look for the counter, meaning that when there's a child that may be in a curse that has a target on their back, that's the individual that the demons take the iniquitous pull towards that child. So you can have a room full of children, and there may be 2 or 3 of them that have that curse on them, let's say a daycare center or something like that, and that will be the one that the pedophile demon, the perverse demon, goes after. And it's sad, because that can be broken off. That's what I do here. That's what we do. We break those curses off, because again, some of you have just had terrible lives. You had bad parents, you had this and that. Well, that could have not taken place. You could have had a normal childhood. You could have enjoyed your childhood. You wouldn't have the multiple you wouldn't have the altars. You wouldn't have this behavior problem. You wouldn't be, trying to always hurt yourself. Some of you, unfortunately, you are self-destructive. You'll get into a relationship and you'll destroy it intentionally or, subliminally. And what happens then, and why would you do that? Okay, listen to me. Because there's a spirit of rejection that needs to be fed. So you get sucked into a relationship only to be rejected, so that demon gets off on it. That's pretty disgusting. That's pretty disgusting. And it breaks the hearts of so many people. And here these demons are just laughing all the way, having a good time. Remember, they don't eat, they don't sleep, they don't rest. They're a spirit. So they go 24 hours a day. They got nothing else to do. And they hate you. And so they work nonstop to make sure that you're in torment. That's exactly what they do. All right. So I just reminded everyone tomorrow night, I'm going to be referring to the tomorrow night's teaching on scotthensler.org or Scott Hensler Network. It's going to be entitled Socks in the Refrigerator. So you're going to have to figure out what that's all about. And so again, I'm going to be hitting things really hard. I'll be referring to Scripture, and I'm going to basically let everyone know that where I stand, because things are going to happen. They're going to happen. We've read the book of Revelation. As the saying goes, we know how it ends. We're heading towards that. And for those who do not believe that you're going to be going through that, then you have bought into the lie. And that means you have rejected the responsibility of what has been put forth to you through the great commandments of Jesus Christ, known as the Great Commission. And I want to let everyone know that regardless of what happens, God loves you. And in that love, we're going to continue to fight. We're going to continue to do those things that bring salvation, that bring healing. So, all right, Julie, God bless you, and we'll see you on Wednesday.